Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast in association with MMA Play 365, the #1 UFC prediction website. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and today we have a special episode on the podcast talking all things MMA in the recent weeks gone by and the issues surrounding MMA and the COVID-19 coronavirus. But before we get into that, a special episode requires special guests. So first I'd like to introduce one of my favourite people in the MMA community, my boy Locke. Locke, it's always a pleasure to have you on, brother. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to do something like this. I'm going stir crazy over here. Like, not even be able to talk MMA or anything, break down cards. I might smash my head through the wall. I'm glad you brought me on to do this, man.
Pleasure's all mine, man. And we also have another special guest in Joe Suntszu. And for those who don't know, he's a DraftKings machine. And if this man hasn't made you laugh by the end of this episode, then you probably have no soul. Joe, thanks for coming on, my friend. How are you?
Wow, man, I am so honored to be like the sole representative of the United States. I feel like I'm the last man on the buffet line. You know, I'm in front of like the UK and Canada. I'm kind of bringing up the rear. I just absolutely love this. There's no video, so I've got my pink neck pillow. I'm sitting in my lounge chair, and I am just like, this is just awesome. I could not think of a better way to spend a Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm just loving this. Thank you for having me on. By the way, MMA Locke, I mean, I actually won one of his little random Twitter contests, and he sent me a sweatshirt at his a hoodie, actually. And my daughter, to this day, wore it to school. Had kids coming up to her at school, at this little preppy white kids' school in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, saying, "What in the heck is the lock of the night? Like, what is that?" You know, like my 17-year-old daughter wearing this shirt, wearing this hoodie. Like, what is that? You know, so props for that.
Listen, with the social distancing kings right now, you know, Locke's in Canada, Joe, as you've already mentioned, in the US, I'm in the UK, so you know, lead by example and let's get started. So obviously the first thing we're going to discuss is, you know, the coronavirus. I want to know what you guys have been doing to keep yourself occupied, to keep yourself busy. Have you been staying in? I hope you have been staying in. So Locke, we'll start with you. Talk to us, man. What have you been doing for the last few weeks?
Honestly, I'm blessed to be able to like work from home. So all my stuff is on my laptop. I don't really have to worry about going out, you know, commuting, taking the train, taking a bus, all that stuff to get downtown and get to my job. So I've been working at home. Otherwise, just taking the little wiener dog out for a walk every now and then. Going for drives, not necessarily going out anywhere, but just going for drives in country areas just to get away and stuff. But other than that, you know, staying at home, ordering some takeout food, trying to cook. You know, I know my fiance's happy that I'm trying to cook, but outside of that, I've just been chilling at home and trying to stay safe.
Yeah, see, one thing you've just said there that we can't do in the UK is just going for a drive and just getting out there. You know, you'll get pulled over by the police, ask where you're going, is it essential, all that sort of good stuff. But, you know, we can get out once a day for some exercise. So today I've been out with my fiance, my daughter, and my dog. Went for an hour's walk just to get out, like I say, just to do a bit of exercise. But I'm the same, man, you know, between that and playing on the Xbox and spending time with my fiance and my daughter, and you know, I do like them qualities, and you know, for what's happening in the world with the coronavirus, I am blessed that I'm spending time with the people I love the most. From a business perspective, obviously things are really slow. There's no MMA. Been spending time as a team, getting the right stuff in place, and you know, like I say, ready to hit the ground running when we get back started. So, you know, for us, it's a little bit similar to what you've said, but again, we sound like we're a little bit more restricted as well. Joe, what about yourself over in the US? What have you been up to, man?
Well, ironically enough, after working from home for my day job for the better part of 3 years, I started a new day job, which is a commutable distance from my home at the end of January. And that was a go to the office every day type of job. So within 2 months of starting that job, of course, like many, we closed our office. But I've been incredibly busy with work. I was telling you guys, I was like actually doing some work earlier because, you know, my company is in a unique position and this is going to sound horrible and mercenary, but we're in a unique position of being very well capitalized. And there are some dislocations in the financial markets that we find ourselves in a unique position to take advantage of. So I've been doing a lot of work on that. And then just from a standpoint of my vocation, which is, you know, gambling and DFS, I actually never thought I'd see the day where I've actually played esports. in DFS, but they had the inaugural slate for Counter-Strikes, which, again, I've never played any of these games. I should kind of put that out there.
I played Counter-Strike as a kid, man. It was my hobby as like a 10, 11-year-old. It was the best.
Okay, so get this. You're going to love this story. So on the inaugural slate of Counter-Strikes, I invest a grand total of $249 in DraftKings Daily Fantasy, and one of them is, of that $222 was in a contest that paid $5,000 to first. Well, wouldn't you know, I won it, and
nice,
I ended up making $7,000 last Wednesday in profit.
Wow.
On in DFS esports. You know, like, you can't make that shit up. Like, I have not had an MMA slate that good this year. So.
I think you found your calling, dude.
I don't know. I mean, like, you know, it was like I'm on the back of others.
Listen,
you know,
I'm
I just read a lot of notes.
Podcast, Joe. You know, if we need to do a Counter-Strike podcast, I'm down.
Oh, dude,
sure.
Like I said, I'm telling you, man, I know nothing about it. I have no desire to watch any of the games. It was lineup creation just by virtue of, like, and that's what I even do in MMA, where you have to put a lot of lineups in DraftKings. It's like lineup construction is key, and I like to think I know more about MMA than I do about esports. But I just read other people's notes, and I just put a lineup together, and it was, you know, it was really, really fortunate. So, and then today, NASCAR. I don't know if you guys know about this. They actually showed it on Fox, and it's actual NASCAR drivers driving simulators. I still don't know how I actually did, because they don't score it until like an hour after the race is finished.
Wow.
So, I mean, like, I put on Twitter, I'm like, who wants to join the Degenerate Club and say that they actually put money on this NASCAR where you're not going to even know how you did until an hour after the end. So, yeah, I played more than I probably should have there, just because I had some money in my pocket. But, you know, like, to your point, yeah, I mean, I've been binge watching some Netflix with the family, and now I have Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and Epix. So, like, you're not going to run out of things to watch. And I'm a big fan of UK and, like, even Canada TV. A great show, for those of you who haven't seen it, that comes out of Canada. It's no longer on, but it's called Intelligence. What a great show. And then UK has just got a ton of great shows. I'm always recoing shows from the UK. So that's kind of what I've been doing, man.
For sure. And it's funny you touched upon the NASCAR thing, because I don't know whether you guys over the pond will know, but we've got a horse racing event, and it's an annual event called the Grand National, and it's the biggest horse racing event in the UK, and that was on, or should have been on, yesterday, but instead of having the Grand National, they did a virtual Grand National, which again is a little like what you've said with the NASCAR. It was a games design team that's put in algorithms and designed this whole virtual horse racing thing. And again, it was on live TV. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, no, I'm not betting on this. You know, I don't trust the virtual games, the algorithms and things like that, because with code and programming, there's an element of human control as well. But then I heard that it was actually all the bookies that was taking bets on this virtual horse racing. It was all the profits that the bookie was making was going to our NHS. So I decided to throw in 30 quid. It was a £10 max bet anyway on every horse that you wanted to bet on. So I bet a horse. I passed the phone to my fiance. She bet a horse, and I got my daughter to pick the nicest colour jersey of the jockey, and so she had a horse, and yeah, you know, we went that way with it. So I didn't really want to, and one of our horses placed as well, so I made half my money back. So I made £15 back. You know, it was just a little bit of fun, but like I say, it was for a great cause. I would never advocate betting on virtual sports at all. But
Newsome, let me translate part of that for our American listeners. NHS is the National Health System,
for sure, yeah.
And the Grand National is, I believe, a steeplechase race, correct?
It's our biggest horse racing event. So there's
but it's not like a US like thoroughbred race. It's you jump over steeples, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's a steeple. Yeah. Those races very rarely happen in the US.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. No. US is more like you've seen the Kentucky Derby. Those are the types of races you see in the US, and even in Canada. Although Canada, they do harness racing a lot too. But yeah, steeplechasing is not very big in North America. So I just wanted to translate that for our U.S. listeners.
Yeah, I didn't understand at first what you meant by steeple, but yeah, we call it fences. I think there's 30 fences that the horses have to jump over, different heights and different.
Yep.
I'm not massively into my horse racing, but I do watch Grand National once. It's only on once a year, so yeah, I do watch it every year. But in the meantime, with all this coronavirus, there's been a lot of MMA news that we're gonna cover a few of the bigger topics in this podcast as well. But I just wanted to quickly touch upon the last live MMA event that we had, which was Cage Warriors 113, that was supposed to be in London the day before UFC London, but obviously London went in lockdown. They managed to move it up to Manchester. I really didn't think they were gonna get that card to go ahead. There was Darren Stewart that's supposed to have been fighting Marvin Vettori on UFC London. Bartosz Fabinski was supposed to have been fighting Rakhmonov on UFC London. But then Cage Warriors ended up headlining with Darren Stewart and Bartosz Fabinski moving back up to middleweight. So, did any of you guys actually watch the event? If you did you have any money on it? Was there any leans that you had? So, Locke, I'll start with you. Talk to me, man.
Personally, I watched the prelims all the way up to the Steve Amable and Perry Goodwin fight. After that, I had some family stuff. Yeah, that was a great fight. I really want to talk about the Conor Hignett and Darren O'Gorman fight. That was a crazy fight. I know a lot of people are riding on the under there. I think they had the under 2.5. And they had 2 minutes and 12 seconds left, or 2 minutes and 12 seconds into that third round. Conor Hignett comes out with the KO finisher. That was a fun fight as it lasted. In terms of a prospect that I didn't really know much about going into the Cage Warriors event, Adam Amarasinghe. I'm probably butchering his name. Yeah, he seemed to be a little bit of a beast against Jake Bond there, went in there and just absolutely crushed him. That kind of stood out to me. And then obviously, the fake Jack Sparrow going out there and just getting absolutely demolished by Aiden Steven. I was kind of looking at, because when I was putting the tape index together for this card, the only real fight that I actually got to watch was Jack Collins against I forgot who it was. But he got mounted immediately and then pulled out a heel hook. Pretty much same thing happened in this fight, but except no heel hook. He just got completely demolished in a minute and a half. Those are the couple of things that really stood out to me in this Cage Warriors event. But in terms of actually having any bets, my lean was obviously our favorite fighter over there, Bartosz Fabinski. I didn't actually put out the bet on him. I did tell people that I was leaning him. I didn't eventually make the bet myself. I believe you did, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that line seemed a little bit absurd, and I was surprised that Fabinski was such a heavy underdog. I think people were just, really buying the Darren Stewart hype. He seems to be improving every single fight. He really worked on his cardio too, which seemed to be a little bit of an issue in his earlier UFC career. So I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, he's just going to go out there and wipe Fabinski. But Fabinski, zero striking, but is still able to go out there and just impose his will on people, take them down, lay on them, do his best work just from the top position. But yeah, I other than that, I didn't really get to catch the Pimblett fight or anything like that.
What about yourself, Joe?
So believe it or not, this is probably the first Cage Fighters card that I've ever actually seen live. So I did watch it. Cage Warriors, sorry. Cage Fighters. Cage Warriors. So I did actually watch it, and I did actually wager. I had Jamie Richardson. Yeah. I had a parlay with David Bear and Aiden Stephen. Is it Stevens or Stephen? Stephen. I had that. I had a parlay with Pimblett So look, I cashed everywhere, and now comes sort of the fall off the cliff moment. I like Darren Stewart, so I just pressed everything I had won up to a real disciplined approach. Everything I had won up to that point on Darren Stewart. I really thought he would exhibit better fight IQ, although Fabinski just grounded him out in that fight. And I mean, okay, fine. It was fun. I mean, I'm going to watch more of them. Pimblett did what Pimblett should have done. It kind of looked like, you know him more than I do, but it kind of looked like a layup to me. Everybody's saying that Pimblett's a guy that should be in the UFC. I get it. That I would like to see him. That performance was kind of a layup that, it looks like he won that pretty easily. But yeah, I liked it. I thought the quality was good. I thought the entertainment value was good. There was one fight and I can't recall which one, that was a really close decision that I felt that I should have gotten, and it would have really made for a good day for me. But I just can't recall which fight it was.
I think that was Goodwin. Yeah, a lot of people thought he got robbed.
Yeah, okay. So that might have been the one where I said, "Oh my God, this is a bad decision." What fight did the judge watch? What fight were the judges watching? I I had a parlay keyed to him, and it just didn't happen. But no, it was good. I liked it. It was very entertaining.
And you know what? Just from an unpopular opinion perspective, and I'll state my reasons for this as well. I actually thought Perry Goodwin won that fight. And when it went to the decision, I was expecting a 29-28 to Goodwin. I am surprised there wasn't a split decision in there, but obviously, you know, I'm a man on his own in that one, because it seemed like, you know, every man and his dog on Twitter was shocked by the decision. You know, robbery, the word robbery was being thrown around. I actually think Goodwin won the decision, but yeah. So in regards to Cage Warriors, just a few things that you guys have touched upon. So yourself, Locke, you spoke about Conor Hignett. Conor Hignett was one of the older fighters that were under the management company that I work with, Heavy Duty Fight Management. He's no longer with them, but he used to be. So he's a guy that I'm really familiar with. You know, I've spoke to him numerous times, met him numerous times, obviously being a part of that fight management company, but really happy for the guy, you know, and he had to go through a lot of shit to get that knockout. You know, I thought he was going to get submitted numerous times before that knockout. So all credit to Conor Hignett. I'm really happy for the guy. Before I get into the one and only bet that I had on the card, I actually passed on two fighters that I was relatively confident in winning, and you mentioned both of them, Joe. So Jamie Richardson was the first one. You know, the reason I didn't bet him, I missed a plus money on him, but he was sort of minus 110 to minus 125 in that sort of region. The reason I did pass on him is because I knew Matthew Bonner was going to come in with this relentless wrestling game plan, which he did. And anybody that knows me well knows that I don't really like betting against that guy. And I wasn't totally sold on Matthew Bonner's wrestling ability, because some of the people that he has grounded out in the past haven't been the greatest quality. But in respect to Jamie Richardson, I just wasn't. I just needed to see that sort of defense on someone that's going to be relentlessly wrestling him. And unfortunately, there was no, you know, that hadn't happened in any of his previous fights, so I had to be disciplined and pass. David Bear was the other one as well, Joe. You mentioned him again. I just didn't really want to play a 2-1 on that card, considering everything was happening in regards to the coronavirus, lockdowns, moving events, fighters coming in from a different country. Obviously, Bear's from France, so. You know, again, I didn't want to be playing any 2-1 favourites on that card. But as for Bartosz Fabinski, he was my only bet. At this point, I taped Darren Stewart twice, because I'd already fully taped UFC London, so I taped him for the Marvin Vettori fight, and the same goes for Fabinski as well. But the one thing that I noticed in every single fight that Darren Stewart has, every one, there's so much time wasted in the clinch. Well, not wasted, the fighters are working, but there's so much time in the clinch, and this goes for opponents of Darren Stewart that have got different styles. So whether he fights a striker or a wrestler, a kickboxer, a boxer, whoever it is, a jiu-jitsu fighter, all these fights that Darren Stewart has, there's just so much time spent in the clinch, and I didn't like that against the Vettori fight, because obviously at the time we thought that was happening. And then when he got matched against Bartosz Fabinski, I thought, I've got to look into this again, because this is a nightmare matchup for Darren Stewart because of how his fights normally pan out. And when I taped it for a second time, I actually taped it before the lines came out, and I had the fight in my head as a pick'em, but I knew Bartosz Fabinski would be the underdog. So I was expecting Fabinski to sort of be around the plus 130, plus 150 region, but I actually thought that would have had value because I lined it as a pick'em. And when I seen the plus 230, I just couldn't not do it. It was just an insane line. It did come down a little bit, but then just as they touched gloves in the first round, I think Fabinski was a plus 280, 290 underdog. It's just crazy value on him. And you know, the other reason why I like Fabinski in that situation is because Darren Stewart was training for Marvin Vettori, who's kind of an all-round fighter. Bartosz Fabinski has only got one thing on his mind. He doesn't like striking. He clearly tries to close the distance, take fighters down, grind them out. You know, it doesn't matter who he's fighting, he's going to have that same game plan. So, cashed Bartosz Fabinski for a second time as a huge underdog. The time before that was a plus 180 underdog against Emil Meck at Hamburg. So, yeah, really happy that came in. One of the biggest stories that I think we're going to move on to now, and I'm really intrigued to get both your guys' opinions on this, is Jon Jones. Obviously, this was a big story that hit a few days ago with Jon Jones being arrested. driving under the influence of alcohol, a gun and an empty shell or something along those sort of lines. There was alcohol under his seat. So, I mean, what's your guys' take on that? Joe, I'm going to start with you for this one. What's your thoughts on Jon Jones? Where do you think it's gone wrong? How do you think he can, sort of bring himself back?
I think it's a statement of the American legal system. I mean, anybody who can afford a really, really good lawyer. I mean, I think it's an absolute joke. I mean, a multiple offender like Jones gets 4 days of house arrest during a pandemic. I mean, okay, yeah, that's real justice for you. I mean, I hate to say it, but anybody else in Albuquerque, New Mexico that's not named Jon Jones and can't afford a really good lawyer, they find them intoxicated in a car with a gun and a shell casing, smelling of weed. I mean, are you kidding me? 4 days of house arrest? I mean, please. I'm not saying they're gonna like juice up the electric chair or anything, but I mean that is like amazing to me that a repeat offender like Jones, who's shown that he looks really good in orange. I don't get it, man. I really don't get it. This guy keeps getting lots of chances. I mean, as long as he's a moneymaker, and it just goes for sports, right? If you can drive revenue, UFC is not going to cut him. I mean, anybody who says that, just understand that it's a business. He is one of the few moneymakers that drive pay-per-views in the UFC. They're not going to cut him. Right? I don't know what kind of sanction they'll put on him or suspend him. I mean, look, on the personal side, the guy needs to get help. I mean, I don't know if any like court therapy is just like he's just giving lip service to it or not. But to me, like, Christ, I do 4 days isolated at home without being arrested. I mean, maybe the ankle bracelet is the saving grace, right? He's got to wear an ankle bracelet for 4 days. But, man, oh, man, I mean, I want to hire his lawyer.
Locke, over to you.
Honestly, it's shocking that he just keeps finding himself in shit, especially during the quarantine. Like, that's the first thing foremost. Secondly, I understand, like, if you want to get out of the house and, like, you're going stir crazy, like you were saying in that body cam video. I understand that aspect of it. And then, I threw out the idea of him hiring a driver. Like, if you want to get out of the house, hire one of your closest friends, pay him like 40 or 50 G's a year to just be on call, go outside, go for a drive, get out of the house, get out of the stir crazy phase that you're in. But then there's also the part where you do want to be completely alone. Maybe he needs to just move to the middle of fucking nowhere and he can just walk around and doesn't need to worry about being behind a wheel or anything like that. Go smoke all the weed you want. Go drink all of that Jorge Masvidal tequila all you want and just get fucking shit-faced and walk around. Why do you need to be behind a wheel? I feel like there's something going on in his household that he needs to get away from, whether it's his fiance, wife, or whatever it is, his kids, whatever it needs to be. But, even a couple days before that, he put out this thing on Instagram and Twitter saying, stay home. This is the one time that we can actually save the world by staying home. And lo and behold, this guy's out in fucking middle of nowhere chilling with homeless people, as he called it. I don't believe that either. For me, it was tough to watch that video. I'm not sure if you guys actually watched the video yourself, but I was able to watch it, but I did not feel good about myself after watching it, because you do feel sorry for him, especially like when you see him actually break once he sees that he's actually getting arrested. That's where you see his voice start to crack up a little bit. Him like, I don't know what's going to happen with my family, my kids, blah, blah, blah. But John, you kind of do know what's going to happen because you keep fucking doing it. Like, I don't know what kind of image his kids have of him now. Like, is it like a repairable image that he has with his kids? Who knows? Who knows how much this is going to affect his family life even worse now, right? So for him, I don't know if you guys saw the video he just put out recently on Twitter too, where he was like scootering around or like off-roading or whatever the fuck he was doing. Clearly still outside of the house. I hope he's with good company at least. I just hope he gets his shit together. Like, this is Jon Jones is really coming into his own as I was becoming a fan of the sport. And to see his rise, like, I road trip down to New Jersey to watch his fight against Shogun Rua. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen him fight multiple times. He fought multiple times in Toronto too. I have this attachment to him just because he is the GOAT. Everybody can say that. No ifs, ands, or buts. You know what I mean? Obviously, you have the doping cases here and there. But to see him like continuously shoot himself in the foot. It's just hard for me to swallow just because I'm such a big fan of him. But yeah, Joe touched on it a little bit in terms of the punishment, the lack of punishment. 4 days while on quarantine, anybody else would obviously be locked up. If you guys remember Will Chope, you guys remember Will Chope?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
This is as soon as I don't remember exactly what it was that came up about him, but as soon as something came out about him about like sexual misconduct or whatever the fuck it was, UFC released him right away. Yeah, I mean, like you're completely right that Jon Jones is getting this treatment, this special treatment, just due to the revenue that he brings in. But at a certain point, that revenue is going to stop coming in, and then as soon as he shoots himself in the foot, he's going to just be on the side of the road. I don't know when that's going to be. But like it seems to be like every time something happens, people are giving up hope on him, and they're just saying, "Okay, this is the straw that's going to break the camel's back." We're still going to see him in action this year. Let's be real about that. But man, it fucking sucks to see. I just hope he gets his shit together personally, as like just an individual, not even as a fighter, just as an individual. Face those demons, do what the fuck he has to do, and just get his life back together. That should be first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree, man, and I have a similar sort of attachment with him. I've never seen him live, but obviously, we're all going to be in the same boat here. We've seen Jon Jones from that very first UFC fight, and we've watched the development, the growth, and for him to become, as you rightly said, the GOAT. And it's really tough to watch. Yes, I did watch that video as well, with the police, and again, yes, it was tough to watch, especially when he was missing numbers, counting down from whatever number the police officer told him to count down from. It was very, very hard to watch. But like we've said, at the same time, he's got to get his shit together. It's almost a case of what could have been for Jon Jones if he'd stayed out of all this trouble and he hadn't had the doping issues, and what could have been for Jon Jones. I mean, yes, he is already, like I say, in my opinion, and obviously your opinion, Locke, I'm not sure about you, Joe, but yes, in my opinion, he is the GOAT, but he could have been so much more, in my opinion, and I do feel that his MMA career has been let down by his personal career, unfortunately. But yeah, he's got to get his shit together, man. Not only was he supposed to be in quarantine, not supposed to be outside the house driving, but then driving under the influence of alcohol is just something that I totally disagree with in general in life. It doesn't make a difference if it's Jon Jones or if it's my brother. I don't agree with it.
Last thing I want to touch on regarding this Jones thing is, like you said, all this outside of the cage trouble has hindered his MMA career. Imagine where the hell he could be if he had stuck to that schedule. Remember when he won the title? Like, he fought like 3 times a year. Like, he just kept going bang, 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 taking out top contenders. He probably would have been at heavyweight by this time. He probably would have been a heavyweight champion. He probably would have had a couple title defenses at heavyweight by this time had he not had all these run-ins with USADA and shooting himself in the foot with all these, criminal activity things that he just keeps getting caught in. Like, it's insane to me. He probably could be even a bigger star than Conor. Let's be real. If he kept going out there and murking people, you know what I mean? Like, he could have this invincibility about him. He kind of still has that invincibility about him, but like, it could have been another level had he kept his shit straight, kept fighting maybe 2, max 3 times a year, defended his title. It would have been ridiculous how much of a star he could have been, but I don't even know if he's ever going to achieve that now. He probably won't.
No, I think it's past that. I wouldn't ever rule out a potential heavyweight fight for him, but it's not going to be a heavyweight division run. You know what I mean? It will just be a big fight in the heavyweight division that will get a lot of pay-per-view buys, a lot of eyes on it, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's just disappointing, man. I really do hope that he gets the help he needs, because at this point, having this sort of shit happening multiple times now, he genuinely needs some help somewhere along the line, whether that be in therapy or, this whole coronavirus isolation thing could be something that really turns his life around, just staying off alcohol and, potentially anything else that he's doing. But I really want him to get the help that he needs from a personal level, because then it should reflect, inside the cage as well. But like I was saying before you wrapped your side up, Locke, I don't agree with the things that he's doing. I don't agree with the drink driving, the smoking and driving, and like I say, with the gun and the empty shell, it's just not a good look. And I don't like that kind of person. Obviously, he's been involved in the hit and runs in the past with the pregnant lady as well. Obviously, that's despicable. The stuff that he's doing outside of the cage is unbelievable, and the fact that he's not getting away with it as such because the law is being enforced to some extent. But like Joe said, if this was anybody else, this would be a man behind bars for many years. So for me, he's had a stroke of luck a couple of times in regards to the law. He should be taking that on board, running with that luck, and just sorting his life out. And yeah, I really hope he gets the help he needs, because that video of the police and pulling him over, very, very difficult to watch, and it's very evident of a human being that's just lost his way and that just needs that help. So I hope he gets the help and support. I hope to see him back in the cage soon. I do think he's going to be fighting in the UFC this year. You know, I've got no doubts about that. Like you said, Joe, they're not going to cut Jon Jones from the UFC. So yeah, let's hope it all turns around for him. Let's hope he gets his shit together and gives himself another chance to really go on another run in the UFC, which I think is what every MMA fan wants to see at this point. They just want to see Jon Jones back in the cage, whether you love him or hate him. You know, the personal stuff outside his life, I'm sure most people completely and utterly disagree with, but him fighting in the UFC 2 or 3 times a year is great for the UFC. It's great for the sport. So I hope to see that back at some point soon. But yeah, he definitely needs some help. And sticking with the UFC, moving on, we've got, you know, another disappointing scenario that we're going to touch upon with Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. 5 times this has now been booked. It's taken a global pandemic to shut it down for the 5th time. I'm absolutely devastated, but in the same respect, I'd been saying weeks and weeks prior to this fight being cancelled that I just wasn't getting invested in that fight until probably fight week, and I even think at that point I was probably over investing in it too early. So the fact that the fight isn't happening, I am obviously devastated, but I wasn't as emotionally invested as I've been the first 4 times. Joe, what's your thoughts? Who did you think was going to win the fight? How are you feeling?
Look, I'm disappointed as well. I mean, you know, I get the narrative on how this fight is cursed. You know, it seems like, and I don't know if you watched the English translation of the interview that Khabib did in Russian. Apparently, you know, he was told by Dana White that it was 99% that the fight would occur in the UAE. And he and his team flew into, you know, the UAE, and essentially at the moment their flight landed, they were told that it was being locked down. So he had to fly back to Russia, you know, and, you know, I don't know if there was some miscommunication going on, but like, why would he have not? Now, again, I'm putting aside now the moral implications of whether this fight should happen or should not happen, or whether any fight should happen. But the bottom line is, I don't understand if Dana really did tell him that, or, you know, if that's something that was somehow lost in the translation. The other thing is, I don't buy, and again, I'm not being a conspiracy theorist here, I just know reality. I don't buy that he can't get a flight out of Russia. I mean, you know, he is friends with the leadership there. I mean, Putin as much as said he would get him a private flight, you know, to the U.S. if that's where the fight was actually going to occur, or anywhere the fight was going to occur. So all these conspiracy theorists on Twitter are saying he was having a hard time cutting weight. You know, I don't know any of it, right? I don't know any of that. It just seems like for whatever reason this fight is cursed. And then, you know, in many instances, and again, I thought Khabib was going to win, but he would win in kind of his Khabib way, which would be grinding out Tony. I thought that, you know, when we had that glimmer of a hope for Justin Gaethje and Tony, that would be, in many cases, maybe a more interesting fight, because you'd have 2 guys that are just going to go out there and bang. And, you know, there'd be knockdowns, and, you know, that fight would generally take place standing, where that's not really Khabib's game. So
who's you picking that fight, Joe?
Wow. You know, it's a good question. I've seen both guys obviously get hurt. I've just seen Gaethje get hurt more. So I'd probably go with Tony in that fight, El Kakue, you know, in that fight. But that was one that I'm like, okay, well, this is a damn good consolation prize. I mean, you know, that's like, you know, it's kind of like finding out that the girl you really like has got mono, but like her sister likes you too. Okay, great. That would have been really, really good.
Locke, what about you, man?
Oh, man, I got to step up my humor, man. Joe's fucking killing me over here. In terms about Khabib and Tony, first and foremost, I want to say fuck you to everybody that thinks that Khabib is ducking Tony, because that's probably the most craziest narrative that I'm seeing on Twitter. And anybody attributing Khabib this fight not happening due to Khabib, screw you too, because coronavirus. All right, let's settle that down. In terms of who I thought was going to win, Newsome, me and you have been talking about this fight since we've met each other pretty much. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's the first conversation we ever had in the DMs was about Khabib and Tony. And I've always been on the Ferguson side. And I'm only saying that because I love the odds on him, man. We were getting roughly around the plus 240, plus 250. I think I even saw plus 260 at one of the bookies too. I think that's crazy value for, in my opinion, maybe second best chance of beating Khabib is Tony, and then I would give Gaethje probably a better chance of beating Khabib. But I just love the unorthodox nature that Tony would bring to this fight. And yeah, we've seen him mounted in the past before by Kevin Lee, and we've seen him get taken down easily. I know that he's going to get taken down. If anybody's telling you that Tony Ferguson is going to keep this fight on the feet, they're a little bit crazy. You gotta not listen to them at all. But I'm interested to see how the fight would play out on the ground. I believe that Khabib would be able to get some dominant positions, but I think that Tony is unorthodox enough to be able to, create some interesting scrambling situations. And we've never really seen Khabib taste adversity. We've never seen him get cut up. We've never seen him, come back and win a fight. And if Tony Ferguson is able to, use those elbows effectively, cut up Khabib, make it an interesting fight, and really put it on Khabib. One thing you see in Tony Ferguson fights, he never lets anybody sleep. He never lets anybody rest. He's always working, whether it's off his back, whether it's on the feet, whatever it is, he's always working. And I'm interested to see if Khabib's able to match that pace, keep that pace, and continue to dominate Tony. And I agree with Joe when it comes to the more intriguing fight being Gaethje and Ferguson. That fight is going to be bananas. That would be the definition of chaos. But for legacy, pure legacy, we need to see Khabib versus Tony. Khabib says it all the time. He could take more money and go fight McGregor and not make a fuss. But he knows for his legacy, this Tony Ferguson fight is the most intriguing one. It's the one that the fans want the most. And whether it's going to be 6, 7, 8 times that they book this fucking fight, the 9th time they got to book it again and make it fucking happen. We need to see this fight. This fight needs to happen. And Tony's clock is ticking. The guy's 37, 38 years old. He's getting up there in age. So this might be his last shot. He shouldn't be accepting any other fights, in my opinion. Again, the Gaethje fight would be bananas. And win, lose, or draw for Tony, I would love to see him fight Gaethje next. But I personally want to see Ferguson win. Even if he wins and then goes out there and rematches Khabib and gets dominated, I would still be happy. I would love to see Ferguson get awarded and rewarded for his 13-fight winning streak that he's on, the crazy fights he's put on in the meantime, going out there and finishing or beating guys like Rafael dos Anjos. The Anthony Pettis fight was crazy itself too. Even the Lando Venata fight, even though Venata took that fight on short notice, that fight was freaking bonkers too. I'm heartbroken that we're not going to see this fight in a week and a half times or whatever, when it was supposed to be April 18th. But Ferguson, in my opinion, should just sit out, let them do 249 with even Ngannou and Rosenstrike headlining, whatever the fuck it is. I don't even give a shit. Don't even charge for it. Make it a fight night if they need to. But just save Khabib and Tony. What if Tony goes out there and injures himself against Justin Gaethje, but still beats him and still has to be out for another year? Then Khabib's going to have to go fight somebody else. Let's just leave the fight alone. Leave those guys alone. Let them fight when this shit blows over and Khabib's actually able to fight. And let's put it together at that time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, like you said, we've spoken about this fight so many times by this point. And, I get that side of the Ferguson and the dog and that dog money. I actually had 6 units on Khabib. I think it was the 4th time that they were booked at minus 187, which, looking at Khabib being minus 300 for this fight, I feel that had some phenomenal value. I do think Khabib would have won the fight. you know, I could go in and break this fight down for 30 minutes if I needed to, but I'm not going to do that. I just feel that you're right in what you said, Locke. You know, the fact that Kevin Lee got Tony Ferguson down so many times, I think you'd be crazy to think that Khabib can't get Ferguson down. But I think from a Ferguson betters or pickers or whoever's predicting him to win, I think their argument towards that would be, okay, well, he'd be a nightmare on the ground with his jiu-jitsu. And, you know, yes, Tony has got that Eddie Bravo 10th planet Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He has got that crazy rubber guard. He can lock in triangles and, you know, throw his legs up for arm bars. And he can be that difficult nightmare off his back. But I just, at that level, at the level that Khabib is with his wrestling and his grappling and how heavy and pressurized he is on top, I just cannot see Ferguson landing a triangle on him. I think Ferguson's best chance would be to constantly be scrambling to stand back up to his feet, create separation and try and piece Khabib up on the feet. Maybe he does tire Khabib out, maybe he does take rounds 4 and 5 should it get there, but I just don't see Khabib losing 3 rounds to Tony Ferguson. I really, really don't. And also the other side to this as well is, obviously it's now been cancelled 5 times over X amount of years. The longer this goes on, the longer these guys aren't fighting each other, I think that favours Khabib more, because like you said, Locke, you know, Ferguson's clock is ticking a little bit. He is getting older. I don't think he's anywhere close to a decline, but I just feel that the longer this is left, the more likely it is for Khabib to win the fight. And I just really hope this doesn't turn out to be the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. You know, I'm not a huge boxing fan, but anybody that is will tell you that they wanted those guys to fight in their prime, and unfortunately that fight happened probably 5 years too late. I really don't want the same for this fight. And what's most annoying for me with this whole Khabib and Tony thing is October 6th 2018 at UFC 229, Khabib main evented against Conor McGregor with the co-main event Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis. These guys have been on the same card, fit, on weight, healthy, in the prime, and it's so frustrating to look back at that event and see that those two weighing in, those two squaring off, but against different opponents, main event, co-main event. In your heart, for me anyway, if the UFC had really pulled one out there and said, you know what, sack Khabib and McGregor off, sack Ferguson and Pettis off, we're going to main event Khabib and Ferguson after the weighed in, you know, I wouldn't have been mad at that. But it's so frustrating looking at that event. I had Khabib winning the fight. I'm devastated they pulled it again. I do think the UFC and Dana White should do the right thing and try and rematch it. It's just going to be a little bit difficult because I'm not sure of the exact dates, but I know Khabib will have Ramadan at some point shortly, I think in the next few months. Obviously we've got a few months left of the whole quarantine thing, so I think if this fight's booked, it would probably have to be sort of September, October. But just do it, man. Just these guys aren't going to be training at the full potential, which I'm going to move on to very shortly. So they're not going to be training how they used to. They're not going to be 100% fight ready. You know, we're in quarantine. Just let's get this out of the way. Let's give them, you know, sort of a couple of months to get back into the swing of things, get training properly, training partners back in, proper camps, and then just let's get it going sort of, you know, October time. For me, that'd be perfect. There's not much time lost there either. God knows what else is going to happen in regards to, you know, like I say, we needed a global pandemic this time to shut the 5th time down. You know, who knows what's going to happen on the 6th time, but hopefully it's not a cursed fight. Hopefully we do see it is the fight that I think at this point is the most anticipated fight in MMA history. You know, I'm sure if you go to any fan, hardcore or casual, and just ask them which fight do they want to see the most in the UFC, I think a lot of percentage of people will say this fight, so hopefully it does happen in the future. And it leads us nicely onto UFC 249. They're supposed to have been headlining that fight. Obviously not anymore. But listen, we don't even have a fight card for this event. We don't have a location secured. The UFC aren't releasing anything to the public, to the press, to the media. Does this event even happen? You know, I was sort of 50-50 on it earlier in the week. I'm starting to edge a little bit more towards that the fight card doesn't happen. I just find it hard to believe that tomorrow we're going to be 7 days away from fight week. Dana White hasn't announced a location. He hasn't announced a fight card, but he has said it's going to be a totally different card. So some fighters must know about this. Some fighters must be keeping this under wraps. I just find it all a little bit too much too soon. I think it's going to be rushed together. Like I've already mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I don't think these fighters are going to be training at the full potential. I know you've got the likes of Tyron Woodley posting on social media saying, in his words, I'm training like a beast. I physically don't understand how that's even possible, because, you know, even when you're leaving the house, you're not going to be having contact really with anybody else. And to train, obviously, in MMA, it's all about that bodily contact between yourself and your training partner. So I really don't understand how these fighters can be training towards being 100% for the fight. And obviously you've got guys like Darren Till before, he's spoken in an interview saying that he doesn't believe any fighter's ever 100% when they step inside the cage. There's always something, even if it's something really small. But these fighters that are going to be training for UFC 249 are going to be absolutely nowhere near that 100%. I don't think it's physically possible, because they can't train in the ways that they're used to and in the ways that they need to compete at their highest level in the UFC. So, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if it did go ahead. You know, Dana White is a man on a mission. You got to respect the bloke for his dedication in his commitment to not only the UFC but to MMA. You know, especially for UFC London, he physically tried everything in his power. He phoned Leon Edwards up. Well, not himself, but Leon Edwards got a phone call from the UFC at sort of 9 o'clock in the morning saying that you've got to get on a flight today, get your team together, we're going to relocate it to America. They tried so hard to get these events on, and obviously the pandemic took over. I do commend the man for that. I do think he's the type of person that, if he's defeated in what he's tried to achieve, as long as he can sit down at the end of that day where he realises he's been defeated and looks in the mirror and tells himself that he did everything that he possibly can, he's okay with it. And I just think he's that type of man. It wouldn't surprise me if he got this UFC 249 event on. But we're 7 days away from fight week tomorrow. We don't know a location. We don't know a fight card. If the event is on, I really just want the fight card, because I just want to start breaking down these fights, analysing the fights, get my tape study prepped, you know, and really start seeing if there's any value on these fighters. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. I'm really torn with it. But the bigger the numbers keep rising with the coronavirus cases, people testing positive, people dying, and how bad and how serious it has been for weeks, and how serious it's continuing to be day after day, I'm going to be really surprised if a live sporting event happens during this time. But like I've already mentioned, if it's the UFC and it's Dana White that's got it done, I'm going to be a little less surprised, shall we say. Locke, over to you. What do you think, man? Do you think the event's even going to happen?
I'm about 60-40 that it's not going to happen. We're about 9 days away from the day that fighters normally arrive to their fighter hotel, which is the Tuesday of fight week. At least most of them normally arrive that day. So within 9 days, we got to figure out who's going to be on the card, how they can get to the location that they attempting to get this card on. I don't even know if Florida is still one of the front runners, because that was one of the states that was being thrown around, if that's actually going to be the place. Personally, and it pains me to say this, I think they should just scrap it. You know what I mean? Like, you brought up a lot of great points regarding fighters not getting proper training. And then we're going to get that thing where if a fighter ends up losing, they can just use that excuse of, I didn't have the proper training, blah, blah, blah. You know, there might be one or two fighters that just accepts it and be like, I know the circumstances going into this fight, I'll accept this loss. But I know there are going to be several fighters that are going to be like, you know what, I wasn't completely, ready for this. Like, I could see if Tyron Woodley comes out there and takes the fight against Colby Covington and loses, and he's just going to try to save face by saying, I couldn't train to the best of my abilities. In my opinion, I think that the worst of this coronavirus is going to be within the next 2 weeks. That's where we're going to see it really peak. And unfortunately, April 18th falls right in the middle of that. So I see no reason as to why they need to, besides our entertainment and fulfilling our degenerate gambling itch, I don't see a reason for them to even try to put on a card at this point. Like, we're not going to get the best product of what the UFC normally brings. You know what I mean? Especially if they're going to be signing these random guys to try to fill out the card. I don't know how much they'd actually lean on doing that, but
that's a really good point as well, Locke. So sorry to cut you in there, because the UFC actually put an email out and sent it over to fighters' managers that they've obviously got on their list, and just asking for UFC vets or fighters that haven't been in the UFC but have got good records or something to that extent. So they were basically sending emails out just wanting anybody to fill a card, and like you say, it's not a good look.
It's not a UFC product, and like I don't mean to shit on Cage Warriors or anything like that, right? But like we saw those first couple fights play out, and a little bit sketchy compared to what we're used to with like some of the UFC talent that we see out there. So I don't really want to see a super drained down and watered down card with guys that are just making their UFC debuts because they feel this is their way to get into the UFC. We don't want to see that. We want to see like 220 or 249, like before everything started to fall apart. Top to bottom, that was probably the best card that we've had in a long time. UFC 245 is another one that comes to my mind. But even before that, like we had this card stacked from top to bottom. And even the fact that they got, Ankalaev and Kutilaba to be rescheduled for that card too was insane. But Jeremy Stevens against Calvin Kattar, Uriah Hall against Jacare Souza, Ben Rothwell against Jan Vellante. I don't really like Vellante, but that should be a fun-ish fight. We had Shamil Abdullah came up out there. Well. Exactly. We get to see him go up there for that carnage. You got to see Islam Makhachev come back against Alexander Hernandez. Like we had a great card put together, but now we're going to get buttfuck A versus buttfuck B. Like we have no idea what we're going to get, and especially the fact that we're not getting Ferguson Khabib. I'm not trying to shit on the rest of the fighters on the card and saying, okay, we should have no event just because we can't have that fight. They should just have no event, period. And again, it pains me to say that. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate on the comment section for even saying that they should scrap the card because we obviously want to see fights. But there's just too much going around. There's too many X factors that are outside of the cage that are going to play inside of the cage, and we're just not going to like it. Like it's just going to be a kerfuffle, and it's not going to be that fun to watch it. And if they end up pulling it off and having UFC 249, and if they still end up keeping Jessica Andrade against Rose Namajunas, and they throw Ngannou and Rosenstrike up there, okay, it's a little bit of a consolation. But in terms of a 12-fight card, top to bottom stacked, it's going to be tough to be able to still pull that off. And I hope, a little bit of hopes that we still have a fight, but I would not be completely pissed off and want to boycott the UFC if they end up canceling it. But yeah, 60-40, I don't think it happens.
Joe?
Wow, okay. So I don't know how I could compete with all this narrative, but I've heard two rumors. One, I've heard that Dana White and the UFC is negotiating with both Oracle and Nintendo, and they're going to do this virtually on Wii. So the fighters are all going to gear up, and they're going to actually go at it on Wii. So that's the first rumor I heard. I'd give that about a 10 to 15% chance of happening. The second rumor I heard is that if they do actually have the fight live, that wherever they have it, they're going to fly in Darren Till to provide transportation services, because one is he's proven his ability behind the wheel of a taxi, and two, he's got so much penicillin in his body from sexually transmitted diseases on 3 continents that he is immune to COVID-19. So they've got Darren Till providing transportation services. He's going to ferry all the fighters around because of his natural immunity. I'd give that at about a 5% chance of happening. So all in, I'm saying probably 80-20 no.
I don't even know where to go from that. Congratulations, Joe. You just killed the podcast.
You've won, Joe. Fuck.
Right, well, we'll move on swiftly. Tyron Woodley. So, obviously, Tyron Woodley's been a huge focus of social media, especially today with Gilbert Burns. And shout out to Gilbert Burns really quickly, because he's providing some excellent content during the quarantine for people that, are bored and cycling through social media. So big shout out to Gilbert Burns. But Tyron Woodley, supposed to have fought Leon Edwards at UFC London. For me, that was the fight for both guys. I think it was a perfect fight. I had Leon Edwards winning that fight. I think his betting line was still good as well, even though he was sort of a moderate favourite. But Colby Covington's come in the mix a little bit with this whole UFC 249 thing. Colby was saying that he wanted to fight, and then Woodley apparently accepted, but then said that Colby said he was only joking, and there's been a lot of back and forth between these guys. So the question I've got for both of you is, when all this is over, say hypothetically UFC 249 doesn't happen, or if it does happen, neither Woodley, Covington or Edwards are on the card, when all this is over, who does Tyron Woodley fight next? Does he take the fight against Colby Covington? I'd really be interested to see that fight. Or does he take the right fight, again, in my opinion, against Leon Edwards from a divisional perspective? Joe, over to you first. What's next for Woodley?
Okay, so I'm with you. Seriously, for a minute, I had Edwards winning that fight. And I will say, and not to kind of beat a dead horse at Darren Till, I really wanted to see Edwards fight Till ultimately moved up to middleweight, and that would have proven who the best UK welterweight was in Leon Edwards. This guy has he's lost 3 times in his career. Once to Usman, who's got 1 loss. Once to some guy who, after he beat him, retired 3-0. Some guy early in his career when he's 20 years old. He lost. So he's got 3 losses in his career. Claudio Silva's the other guy that beat him. So, and he's only has 1 loss in his career. So, I'm really upset. I liked Edwards in this fight. Who is Woodley going to fight? I mean, I think Woodley and Covington. As much as I like Leon Edwards, it's either he is not doing a great job marketing himself, or the UFC is not marketing him well enough, or a combination of the two. Because I think the marketing hype would be much better with Woodley and Colby Covington. And who can forget, Woodley's iconic rap song, "I'll Beat Your Ass." I mean, I could definitely see him coming out rapping like, "I'll beat your ass, Colby, Colby, Colby." So I could actually see that happening. And I think this would be a really compelling fight. I think you could get some buzz behind it. You got both guys who are coming off of losses to Usman. I think it'd be interesting. Look, I have that fight first. Let the winner fight Leon Edwards. I heard that the UK London guys are getting some of the money that they were supposed to make, which is good. So maybe that gets him through, lets him sit this one out. Woodley fights Colby. The winner fights Rocky. I like that.
Yeah, I also like Woodley and Covington as well, because obviously they both trained together when Woodley was back over at American Top Team. There was rumours, it was from, I think, Colby's mouth, saying that when they wrestled, it was Colby that had the better of Woodley pretty much consistently, and Colby was saying that's why Woodley didn't want to fight him and all this sort of stuff. So for those situations, I always like to see how the fight actually plays out, who was right. Was Covington right? Was he actually telling the truth? Did he get the better of Tyron Woodley in regards to the wrestling? And of course, we'll find that out because there will be some wrestling exchanges in that fight. So from that perspective, yes, I do like the fight between Woodley and Covington. However, I do still think the right fight, when all this is said and done, when the whole COVID-19 coronavirus situation is done, I do still want to see that Woodley and Edwards fight, because I just really feel that from Edwards' perspective, a win over Woodley would really jolt him up into the rankings even further, into a title fight. And I just think he's got a better chance of beating Woodley than he does Covington. So I think the right fight was made, as I've already mentioned. I do really want to see that fight as well. And also the funny thing is, Leon Edwards threatened Tyron Woodley that he'd walk out to his rap music as his walkout entrance. So, I really want to see an arena full of people in absolute stitches if that happened. And, what sort of mindset would that put Woodley in whilst he's in the backs? I assume it'd be Edwards walking out to the cage first in the blue corner. So what would Woodley be thinking as he's walking out after Edwards has just walked out to his rap music? So, That was funny from Leon Edwards. It really did get me that. But I'm going the opposite way, Joe. I want to see the original fight. I want to see Tyron Woodley and Leon Edwards lock. What about you?
I'm with Newsome here. I really want to see Edwards and Woodley get it on. That's the better fight, in my opinion, at least for Edwards. And I agree with you. I think he's going to have a much tougher time beating Covington. And let's be real, I don't even think that Covington would take the Edwards fight if at least Edwards doesn't have Woodley under his belt. So I don't know. I think people are overrating Woodley a bit. I'm surprised at the amount of love that I'm seeing for Woodley. In my opinion, he's just like a decent wrestler that doesn't have the best top control, who doesn't use his wrestling the best, and has a great overhand right. That's about it. Edwards, I believe, would have been able to dance circles around him, use his footwork. We've seen him kind of implement his wrestling as well, too, so I wouldn't even be surprised if in the 4th or 5th round we've seen him shoot for a takedown on Tyron Woodley if it got that far. But man, I loved Edwards at that -140, -150 range that he was at. And like that was going to be a big play for me. I was really waiting for that card. I was going to have a personal bet on it as well with somebody in one of my Twitter DMs who was like riding high on Woodley for God knows what fucking reason. But yeah, I think Woodley's obviously going to want the Covington fight over the Edwards fight. Both fights, I believe he would lose. But I think he'd make a little bit more money for the Covington fight, especially if they had it as like a main event of a fight night. I'm not sure how his pay scale would have worked out in that aspect. But I think the sad part is I think Joe's going to be right here. I think that we're going to see Woodley and Covington after this whole coronavirus thing blows over. And Edwards is kind of going to be stuck out there. You know, Covington probably won't fight him, like I said earlier. And then Edwards is going to have to look for another top welterweight contender to finally, you know, staple himself in that top 5 of the welterweights. You know, I thought the Dos Anjos fight was a great win for him and a great name under his belt. But I thought Woodley was the next, you know, logical answer to continuous progression up that welterweight ladder. But yeah, I really hope that Woodley, you know, takes the Edwards fight once again, whether it's in, you know, London again or not. I hope he takes that fight. But a part of me thinks that we're going to end up with Woodley and Covington once this whole thing blows over.
Yeah, and, you know, just really quickly touching upon it again, I just think Leon Edwards deserves it, man. The dude's had 21 fights. The first loss was an illegal knee disqualification. Then he lost a very, very close split decision to Claudio Silva, who is an absolute machine on the mat. That was his UFC debut as well. Then his last loss came against Kamaru Usman, who is the current welterweight champion. And then his wins after that, there's names such as Albert Tumanov, Vicente Luque, Brian Barberena, Peter Sabota, Donald Cerrone, Gunnar Nelson, RDA. And that's his win streak. That's his current win streak. And if it's not Woodley, if they want to give Woodley that fight with Colby Covington, I'm not going to be mad. But just make sure Leon Edwards is the next fight for the title against Kamaru Usman. For me, they're the only two outcomes, in my opinion. But moving on, and we get to the last segment of the podcast. So I assume we're all going to be touching upon, again, that Woodley and Edwards fight pretty soon. We've got potential bets from the cancelled events. Now, the 3 cancelled events that we've got is UFC London, UFC Columbus, UFC Portland. I only fully taped UFC London out of all this. I stopped after London because of the whole lockdown thing. You know, I didn't want to start wasting my time, and I had a funny feeling the events would be cancelled, which they were. So the UFC London, my potential bets that I will list momentarily, are more of a solid lean than what the Columbus and the Portland bets were. But Locke, I'm going to start with you. Tell me what your potential bets were, man, real quick.
Just for the UFC London, we'll go with first?
Yeah, you go UFC London, then go UFC Columbus, and go UFC Portland, man. Tell us.
Yeah, so I was going to bet Edwards over Woodley. That was a for sure bet. I was still looking at other spots. Like, I wasn't fully done taping UFC London when this whole coronavirus stuff started to take over. But I was also intrigued by Jack Shore over Gerald De Freitas. I don't recall what the lines were, and it kind of sucks that I don't have those lines with me right now to really,
Jack Shore,
you know, have it
about minus 160. I think he was sort of minus 200, minus 225, like a week or so later.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a lean there. But then for UFC Columbus, I was really hoping to get that dog money down on Yorgan De Castro over Greg Hardy. I know De Castro's not the most technical fighter out there or anything either, but I think he had the power to actually land on Hardy and probably make it a little bit interesting there. So I was happy with the plus money that we were going to get on De Castro. And then also I was really looking forward to betting Laureano Staropoli over Chaos Williams. I think Chaos Williams, you know, he got that one punch knockout that he needed over Alex Morono to really catapult himself into the UFC. But, you know, when you guys really run the tape on the kid, he's still very green, still throws a lot of, like, you know, looping shots, and he's getting away with his power. But I think that Staropoli was going to have a little bit of success kind of dancing around him and landing good shots. I'm not sure if there was a line release for that. Was there? I'm not sure.
I can't remember seeing one. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, a lot's happened in the last 2 weeks.
Of course. Yeah, no, I was hoping that Best Fight Odds was still going to have these odds up, but they failed me there. So I was hoping to get Staropoli over Chaos there. And then for UFC Oregon, definitely did not tape this one, but I did skim over it. And a couple of the fights that I was looking at was Edmund over Brunson, but I think that was getting a little bit chalky. I do not remember what the line was on Vicente Luque over Randy Brown, but that was definitely something I was looking at. The fight doesn't go to decision on the Nico Price and Salikov fight because We all know that Nico Price does not like the judges. And then Julia Avila over Carol Rosa was another lean that I was looking at for UFC Portland. But again, did not get to tape any of that stuff. And yeah, it kind of sucks that we missed the potential plus money on some of these bets. But the one that I'm most sad about that I'm not going to be able to cash is Leon Edwards over Tyron Woodley.
Joe, what did you have, man?
Okay, so for the London card, the only fight that I was really looking at betting, and I hadn't bet it yet, I was about to pull the trigger on it, was Edwards over Woodley. So that was my bet. There was actually quite a few fights that I liked on the Columbus card. Now, those of you guys don't know me very well, but there are people in the community who refer to me as the chick whisperer, and that's my proclivity for watching female MMA fights. So a couple of fights I was looking at, I was actually looking at Aspen Ladd to beat Juliana Pena, although Pena got hurt. And then I was looking at, and I'm going to go back to the well on Tisha Torres against Iuni. And I think that if Tisha did not win this fight, she would get cut. So that was another fight I was looking at. And then I was looking at Roundtree to actually knock out Sam Alvey. And finally, I thought that the line should have been a lot wider on Frankie Murder over Rosenstruck. I think they just rushed Rosenstruck too quickly. I would have loved to have seen Rosenstruck's fight, say, a Cyril Gagne. I thought that would have been a very interesting fight, and then maybe give that winner to, I don't know. They probably still would have needed a few more fights, but this seems like a rush job to me. I thought the line could have been a lot wider. Going on to UFC Portland, just pulling it up real quickly. UFC Portland, I did like, and Locke pointed it out. My girl, the Raging Panda. I was so happy that the UFC signed her. She's a pure wrestler. I mean, she needs to work on her striking, but I just love her wrestling. The Raging Panda, I thought, would have had a pretty decent time with Carol Rosa. I was also obviously looking at the main event. I was looking at, Harris to maybe touch on Overeem's chin because, I was thinking Overeem couldn't run for 3 rounds. I like that fight. I agree that, Edmund was getting a little chalky, but I like what I see with that kid. Despite my inherent bias against his camp, I did like that. And then, Nico Price, Salinov, the under has to look good on that fight. Maybe look at what the by knockout props were. That was more of something I would wait for. And then one fight that I was really interested in was Esparza against Michelle Waterson. I love the Karate Hottie for a lot of reasons. I just think that our Esparza, if she's got anything left, she should be able to win that fight. So I liked Esparza. I liked the Raging Panda and Julia Villa. And I was kind of looking at, Price or Salikov, the knockout props.
So yeah, for me, for UFC London, I'm with you guys. I like Leon Edwards a lot versus Tyron Woodley. I actually think, though, the best sort of lock on the card, none of you guys have touched upon it, was Kevin Holland against Jack Marshman. I know the line was very high. It was sort of like minus 300. Man, I just, I think on the feet, on the ground, wrestling, clinching, strength, cardio, technical ability, volume, output, I just feel everything edged towards Kevin Holland to the point where I just think the line could have been so much wider, even at minus 300, minus 350 or whatever it was. So Kevin Holland was going to be a parlay piece for me for sure. Mark Diakiese, I liked him versus Jai Herbert. I think that line could have been wider. Tom Aspinall versus Jake Collier. I really, really like Tom Aspinall. I think he's a solid fighter, and I think he's going to make some big moves in the UFC heavyweight division once the whole coronavirus thing has gone away and we've resumed back to normalcy. I do think Tom Aspinall is going to make a lot of noise up in that 265-pound division. And then, of course, Verbinski, as always, as an underdog as well against Rakhmonov. Really surprised at the line. Really expected Verbinski to be a favourite there. That would have been a nightmare matchup for someone like Rakhmonov to come into the UFC, making his debut, flying all that way over to the UK again to fight that wet blanket that is Bartosz Verbinski. So really surprised to see underdog money on Verbinski, so that would have been a bet there as well. UFC Columbus, really, really like Cody Garbrandt against Suntszu. So obviously we know Garbrandt is a little bit suspect in regards to IQ and his chin and things like that. But I think this was a really smart fight for the UFC to book for Garbrandt to get him back on track, because although obviously Suntszu has shown that he can knock guys out, you know, he knocked Matthew Lopez out in round 3, I think it was, you know, big knockout, but he's not known for his power punching. You know, if he starts wrestling, he beat Rob Font via takedowns and top control. I don't think Cody Garbrandt's going to get taken down that easily. I don't think he'd get taken down at all by Suntszu, even if he tried. I just think this was a really good fight for Garbrandt to get back on track, and the line was also very, very good as well. De Castro, you mentioned that lock. I also like De Castro against Hardy as well. After we saw Ben Sassoli against Marcos Rogerio de Lima a few weeks ago, I do feel that Greg Hardy could have done more in that fight. So I still think there's some rawness, that he might be pretty green still. I think Jorgen De Castro had some movement, had some power, had some speed, and the size as well to deal with Greg Hardy. Tanner Boser up at the heavyweight division again against Jeff Hughes. That was a fight that I liked. Randy Costa versus Martin Day. That was a fight that I liked as well for Randy Costa. And then, you know, you touched upon, Joe, the chick whisperers people call you. Well, people call me the Sam Alvey whisperer. I actually wasn't going to touch this fight this time against Khalil Roundtree. I actually think Sam Alvey had a good chance of winning this fight. So I know you were looking at Roundtree potentially knocking him out, Joe. I think the fight was going to be very, very close, and I wouldn't have been surprised if Sam Alvey actually won that fight. However, it is hard to trust Sam Alvey against a fighter that's unpredictable like Roundtree, because sometimes Roundtree comes out there, he looks phenomenal, but sometimes he comes out there and he doesn't look as phenomenal as he did the time before. So it was a tough fight to call. From a line perspective, I think Alvey would have been a big underdog. So, you know, the value probably would have been on Sam Alvey, but I personally wasn't going to touch it. I do think Sam Alvey would have won the fight. UFC Portland, as both of you guys said, Edmund Shabazian. The line was getting a little bit juicy, as we've already mentioned, though. So whether you take the risk on that with paying that chalk, I'm not too sure. Carla Esparza, Waterson, really liked Esparza in that fight. I think her strengths would have played a big factor in the fight in regards to wrestling and top control. Waterson has shown she can get back up to her feet and whatnot, but yeah, I liked Esparza in that fight for sure. Alex De Silva was one that I was looking at against Tristan Connolly. Don't really have too many thoughts in regards to detail right now. That was a fight that I was just wanting to tape, but I did like Alex De Silva pre-tape. And the fight that I can't believe any of you have mentioned, maybe it's just my sort of fetish in MMA, but I was absolutely hyped for Arman Tsarukyan versus Davy Hamos. That fight was going to be nuts, like, for all the reasons that I love wrestling, grappling, transitions. I just think that was going to be a phenomenal fight. I did like Tsarukyan to win that fight, though. I still think what he did against Islam Makhachev on his UFC debut just speaks absolute volumes for where this kid is at. So those were my picks and potential bets for the 3 cancelled events. And like I say, that was the final segment. That's all we've got time for tonight, guys. So I really hope that everyone's enjoyed the episode. I know it's a little different to what we normally provide, but in times like this, it's hard for content. I want to thank both Locke and Joe for joining me too. I really do appreciate it. Those guys will sign themselves off in just a few moments, but just very quickly touching upon MMA Play 365. Obviously, we've got no live events right now, so all current subscribers to our betting advice packages, as we've already posted on social media, you will be looked after. Any events missed, we'll just add on to the current subscription, so please don't worry about that. As for the website itself, this break's given us plenty of time to spend with our marketing team, and we've recently just introduced our new blog section to the website, so make sure you go and check that out. We'll be dropping articles regularly, MMA quizzes regularly, so just something to keep everybody happy during the quarantine. And with that said, any last words from yourself, Locke?
Nothing too much. Check out the Tape Index, because that's always a great tool for a lot of people, even during these trying times. Yeah, that's about it. Just make sure you guys follow my ass at MMALOTN on Twitter. It was great doing this, man. Joe, you're a fucking awesome dude. I'm happy to share a podcast with you finally. Hopefully we get to do a little bit of these more together in the future. And then Newsome, man, we got to do more of these too. Shit.
I agree, man. I definitely agree. And any final words from you, Joe?
Oh, I do. You know I do. So same here, Locke. Let's definitely get together and meet up at some fights. I mean, I keep threatening Adam that I'm going to come to the UK. for a fight, or maybe somewhere in Europe, depending. But I'm going to leave you guys with this. An American, a Brit, and a Canadian are in a plane. The pilot informs them that the plane is going down, and unfortunately, there are no more parachutes, and they have to jump. The American yells, "For God and country," and jumps out of the plane. The Brit yells, "For the Queen," and jumps out. The Canadian yells, "For fun," and jumps out. There you go, guys.
Well, once again, guys, thank you for listening. We'll leave you with Joe's joke, and we'll be back very soon.